So just the whole format of the talk, also for your convenience, Pranjal, they will be
Yes.
putting in their questions in the chat box. So
Okay.
could you see the chat box is visible to you?
Wait. Chat. Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so this is where all the questions will come towards the end of your presentation.
Yeah. So, did my chat reach you?
Yeah, we can see you typing hello everyone here.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So, but the thing is that when I'll be showing my presentation, the chat will not be visible that time. So,
That's perfectly fine. It is only towards the end of your talk that you have to go to the chat box. So once you've finished
haha.
everything, tab up chat
Okay.
box fully and all your questions will be there and you can take them one by one. Feel free to skip
Okay.
any questions that you probably don't find uh, you don't find up to the mark, or if you've already addressed them, just ignore them.
Okay.
And I think we should start. We have 15
Okay.
people. I think login.
Mhm.
So I'll just start with the whole introduction bit again. So we have
Okay.
amongst us again Dr. Pranjal Garg, who you've met on Sunday, albeit briefly, and we were talking about the Chalcolithic period and the ceramic studies of that particular period. You've already had talks about ceramics, so you know exactly what's going on. Some of you have even had the time to work with some of them and go through a lot of their historiography, as well as a lot of studies relating to the ceramics of Chalcolithic period. So without wasting much time, Pranjal, the floor is all yours. And we have about half an hour to 45 minutes for the talk, and then we have the question and answers. The entire talk will be recorded. The question and answers will not be. So just make sure that everything that you have as a doubt is asked at the end of this session. If anybody is thrown out due to any of the network reasons, please post your questions in the main research ring group on WhatsApp so that we can take them up here at least. Right? So without further ado, welcome once again, Pranjal, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shreya. It is a pleasure to speak about the pottery again to you people. So, I'll speak about the ceramic studies of the Chalcolithic period, and we'll discuss how the morphology of the pottery is studied, the typological study. Then we'll go to some particular examples of black and red ware and the culture of black and red ware and particular black and red ware across India. So, like we had discussed a little previously, but I'll repeat those things. There might be new students participating. So, this is I've taken a lot of pottery from the cultures that were coexistent with the Harappan civilization, and the pottery of these cultures particularly was very different from the civilization. I have taken mainly gritty ware because that is something that is not usually discussed, not usually studied, because mostly people would look into the pottery that is of fine kind, that looks attractive, that feels good in the hand. So let us try and give some importance to the gritty ware, because that is actually something that sustained the society, sustained the economy, sustained every household, particularly because tableware is just fancy ware. You can always use gritty ware also, but skipping the fancy ware, the whole household depended on what your storage material was, storage vessels were. And that is how actually the pottery had started. Initially it was very coarse, it was very uh, crude in nature, and the gritty ware continued. The coarse kind of pottery always continued. Even today, if you go into some villages where pottery is found in ample amount, terracotta pottery, you'll see that coarse ware still continues, while fine ware has mostly died out except our crockeries. So this is from a culture that exists in North Gujarat, Anartha culture. It is my study, my research of PhD was comparing and understanding the pottery of Anartha culture with South Rajasthan's Ahad Banas culture, and I've established socio-cultural links between the two on the basis of their ceramics. So this is one of the Chalcolithic cultures alongside the Harappan civilization. Interesting part about this Anartha culture was that they were actually living with the Harappans on the Harappan sites. while they had some of the sites to their own self, exclusive sites of Anartha culture, which were very few. Another important thing about Anartha culture and as well as Ahad culture was Anartha culture goes back in one of the sites called Loteshwar in North Gujarat, Kutch region, as early as 3700 BCE, which is you would say not even the beginnings of Harappan civilization. So these people are some cultures who have been experimenting and looking into trade, communication. They have been developing their society, economy. They have been dealing with science and technology way ahead of when Harappan civilization started. So these people have some very good science and technology, which was even being supplied to the Harappan civilization, which has been repeatedly being pronounced in several researches along with mine recently. So let's look at the morphology of the two. These are both coarse wares, both are gritty wares, and they have a grit. They have very fine, sharp particles of sorry, not fine. They are very big particles of grains added separately in the clay, in good clay, to give this coarse feel of it. And on the left hand side, is my cursor visible to you? On the left hand side, this is uh, a coarse sherd which does not have a very good surface treatment, while the same kind of coarse material has a good surface treatment here. So depending on what they needed it for, what they required it for, they gave a surface treatment accordingly. Okay, so we'll look at the right hand side part with two stickers in more detail. This is a zoomed in photo of the sherd. This is a big jar actually. This is a huge jar which has a very small sherd that was recovered from the site, and it has this ribs. It's called corrugation also. And the interesting part was of a jar would be, it's even typologically, a lot of people they fight over that what this could have been just by looking at the rim. Some people say this is a jar, this is a pot, or this is a pot jar. Some people have coined a new word called pot jar. Some people say that it's just a big pot. Some people say it's just a small jar. So usually I would still not declare anything because one cannot. These are all ambiguous terms. Usually where the neck and shoulder has been flattened, okay, it has been smoothened to a same level, you could call it a jar, because that does not usually happen in pots. It's either happening in bowls or some turfs. Otherwise it's happening in jars. Bowls usually would not have often would not have a protruding rim, but here you have a rim, and of course the size of it gives you the shape. So I would like you to look at this image. I've shown a zoom image of an insert image of this. You can see these white portions on the protrusions, the white shine on the ribs. This is not something of external material, not some salt or anything else or some other decoloration. This is actually shine. When I was photographing it, this is the shine on the tips, and this shine is because it has been smoothened, it has been rubbed with something so that it has this shine. So it's very difficult to imagine for most people today, why would someone give a shine to a jar that is used for storage? Because this is a rather big jar. If you look at the scale, it's a big jar. This is just 5 centimeters. You can imagine this would have been just 1/3 or 1/5 of the actual height of the jar. So this is the kind of treatment they give, and we have the color, the slipping also here. You can see red color slip on the external surface of the jar, which has worn out, but some of it still remains. This is something at least 5,000 years old, sometime around 3000 BC, or between 3000 to 2500 BC, from the early levels of Anartha. And you can see the coarse material, the coarse fabric that has been used to make this jar. Let's go further and understand how coarse can this get. I hope you can see the pebbles, the small pieces of stones that are available, that have been part of the matrix of the whole clay. And I would like you to look at this one particularly, under where the number is written. Across the line, incision line that is going, there's a huge piece of stone, huge, too huge to be part of a pot. Usually, like you had heard the lecture on um, painted grayware, it would not have stones, it would not have any of such stones. That would be pathetically bad. So PGW would not have something like that. But a coarse pottery has some stones as big as this or even bigger sometimes, and it has this incision designs. So again, you had slipping in the previous one, you had ribs, corrugated ribs. So they are trying to decorate even their storage pots, which is something very surprising today. If you have something just for storage, a tin can or something, and if it is broken or it does not have a lid, you just wrap it up with something. We don't pay attention to that. So somehow uh, there's another level of thinking that is projected through all of these incisions, all of these surface treatments, all of these aesthetic makeovers. Along with that, in spite of having a coarse surface, a coarse, like they could have slipped it, they could have coated the surface with a finer clay and then decorated it, but they didn't do that. They kept this coarseness and they decorated on top of that. So that is something that is surprising, that they want to decorate, but they don't want to make it look like a fine ware. Though they themselves had a distinction between the fine ware and coarse ware. And even the fine ware, like if you look at NBPW, PGW, even PGW, later on we'll talk of black and red ware. All of these wares were not fabricated fine from the day one. If you look at Ahar culture, or if you look at any of the other cultures where you find a particular ware continuously being made from the beginning, from the early stages to mature to the declining phase, you will not see that black and red ware, or there is a thin red slip ware in Ahar which is called the deluxe ware. They will not be fine from the beginning. In fact, deluxe ware, what you call thin red slip ware of Ahar culture, because it has to be a deluxe one, it has to be the finest pottery that they made. It started in mature period when they knew how to make good fine pottery. So the black and red ware in the beginning had very coarse material. Let me continue with the coarseness. See, you can see another piece of stone here and a lot of big grains, really big particles of sand in the section. But the interesting part is the whole section is well fired. There is no problem with the firing. I'll show you some shirts where there's problem with the firing. So now they are aware, with this you can understand, they are aware that when they need a well fired section, a uniformly fired section, and when they need, or when they do not need anything particular, they just need a pot, they just need a jar which has to be oxidized on the external surface, and it may remain reduced or ill fired or quite unfired or badly fired in the core area of the section. We'll see some examples of that kind. So you can see the coarse material is throughout. It's not been, usually if you look at the coarse pots today, what potters are making, they will fill the inner portion with the coarse material, and uh, they will give a coat of good clay, levigated clay, or a better clay than the coarse one inside, and then the pot will look very smooth and shiny from outside. That is not what they are doing. So I'm repeating that for you to take your attention to this particular detail, that when they want coarse, they want coarse, and they're aware of it, they're conscious that what they're making, and that is something very advanced for a beginning culture. Okay, we are talking of 3700 BC, 3000 BC, 2500 BC. They are still experimenting with pottery. Here again, now here we have from another culture, another potsherd where the firing has not been done that well, because probably they didn't need it. They intentionally made it this way. Of course, I won't say that there are no exceptions. There are some exceptions where they wanted a particular firing and some pots were ill fired. They remained ill fired, or they could not be fired well because of their location in the kiln, and because of some firing fault that took place during firing. So those things are there, those exceptions are always there. But if you see 1,000 shirts or 3,000 shirts, you'll understand that they are quite clear about what they want, and they achieve they achieve the core, the section, the kind of firing, the kind of coarseness or the kind of fineness that they want, that they intend. That is not accidental. Here again, we can see what I just explained, that the inner portion is ill-fired. Also, there is some coating of something. The black portion is not just because of firing, but it is mainly because of firing. There is probably also coating on some of them. Not all have a coating, but outside it is quite oxidized. You can see they all have. These are the same pot shirts turned around. Okay, so you can see the shapes are all same. Some of them might be a little misplaced here and there, but they are all the same shirts, front and back. So you can see that they have all the outer surface well oxidized, the inner surface, the section is also well oxidized, like you can see in this top shirt, but the inner surface is reduced. It's a little black. So that is again, it's not a technological error, it's not a skill error. It is something that they wanted to achieve. It's something they wanted for a particular reason. Now, a lot of research needs to go into this, that why they need an inner surface to be black. Does it add to the hygiene? Does it make the grain or whatever they are storing more secure, more healthy? Does it store it for a longer period? There are a lot of questions around this, because if they are doing it so finely well, you can see in this shirt, the biggest shirt, they are doing it really finely well. The firing has been just perfect. They have put probably some hay inside. How they do, we can only assume things, but they have probably done it through putting some hay, some dry hay inside, and that gives out a smoke. The smoke then gets captured in the inner surface of the pot. So, but it's not that easy as it sounds. If you do some experimental archaeology, you will burn most of the pots that you'll make until next 5-10 years. So here they have, this is from another layer. It's a little later period. So the whole, somehow it's very intriguing, that whole skill is is disturbed. You don't, you suddenly see that those same people who have been making the finest of pottery have, in the declining phase, uh, as if forgotten all of their skills, and they've started making these pots with really bad firing. Maybe they don't have time, economy is doing down. There are several reasons that archaeologists give, but it's still something that is unanswered, because they have time to put slip, like you can see in this shirt. They have time to put a slip on it. They have time to fire it. They're anyway firing it. It's reduced, just not oxidized. It's not uniformly fired. They've not taken care of it well while the kiln was going on. But uh, it's it doesn't look like that they don't have time, because they have fired it to almost same degree of temperature as a uniformly fired, well oxidized pot should be fired at. So the time taken is probably the same, but the quality has reduced. It has uh, gone down, and they are spending time on decorating it, on slipping, on doing all the surface treatment. They have inside designs, they have applique designs, they have all the things on late pottery also, but somehow the uniformity of firing is not taken care of, and that has been seen across the cultures, across the time, whether it is Chalcolithic period, whether it is Iron Age, late historic period, early medieval, or even today. Here is the inner portion of one of the shirts, a very small shirt, because this was so coarse that every time I picked it up, I lost at least 20 to 30 grams of the clay. It was that brittle. And let me tell you, things don't get brittle because they are old for the ancient period. They get brittle because they were made brittle. The Harappan pot, if you find a pot from a Harappan site of mature period, just intact, okay, everything intact, I tell you, you can use it for next another 1,000 years. It will last you. Today's potter's pot will last you only one season, or maybe not even that much. But they are just sitting there underground as it is, as they were made 5,000 years ago or even earlier maybe. But this shows that if it is brittle, they wanted it to be brittle. If it is perfectly fine, well uniform, they wanted it that way. If it is coarse, they wanted it that way. If it is fine, they wanted it that way. So they had a complete, utterly skillful command on what is going to be the result. So it's not like things are not by chance. We are very clear about that, that things are not by chance. Here is a little comparative of pots, pot jars from different levels, just to understand how the section can vary. A uniformly fired pot from of a coarse pot, okay, and here it is an ill fired coarse pot section. This is a little better, still better, and best. So this is just from the point of view of oxidation. And also, of course, if it is better oxidized, it somehow is a more lasting one. If it is uh, if it is uniformly fired, well oxidized, the pot lasts more, it doesn't get brittle. But the, like I told you before, if they wanted it to last more, they would do something accordingly. They would not uh, let it get reduced or let it remain ill fired. This is another interesting example where it's totally reduced inside. Although it is a redware, it looks so gray from the inner core of it in the section. While such a, you can see the scale, the actually the aperture was such that I could only capture one of the two, either the scale or the shade. So because this section was very important, they have such a thin oxidized layer. It's, I think this is a very beautiful shirt. The whole beauty lies uh, not in the color as such or the shape or something. It's how skillfully they have kept the surface so thinly oxidized, while the whole of inner portion is totally reduced. This is really an incredible piece. And I don't know, if you see from archaeologist point of view, this is an artifact. This is not just pottery, it's an artifact. It's it's one of the best examples of the skill of firing, the skill of pottery making that they had achieved as early as that. Just to give a contrast, these are the these are the fine wares. You can see by the fabric here, a broken section, another broken section. If it was reduced, it was reduced uniformly. If it was oxidized, it is oxidized uniformly. It has a beautiful surface on which you can do painting, and it will come out so beautiful. They have slipped, and on top of the slip they have painted with different colors. This is probably some of them are probably, and this one surely is a pre-fired painting which melted into and kind of sintered into the pot. Because of the heat, it really gelled into it. If you see the paintings now today, what potters do on the pots, it just wears out. And here I'm talking of what is surprising is that I'm talking of pots that are lying uh, in very high temperature, where the humidity is high because it's close to coast in Gujarat, in North Gujarat, Kutch region. And even worse than that is they are lying in salt water, okay, salt infested soil. So with our nice pure RO water, the pots don't last more than a season. And with that salt water, in spite of everything, the paint has not gone, the slip has not gone, the surface has not worn out, the fabric has not worn out. There is, it's just like made yesterday, or right, freshly baked, coming out of oven but broke. So this is a skill that is lost today. And no potter, no ceramic designer, nobody understands this. Although archaeologists claim that yes, there is, we have done the we have done some typological studies on it, we've done some mineral studies on it, we know what are the minerals in it, what kind of soil there is, what might be the provenance of the clay, and from where it was procured, at what temperature it was baked, what they must have done to get the uniform firing, and then was the painting done pre-firing or post-firing and then re-fired again? So is it double firing? And there are a lot of other terms, technical terms that they use to kind of satisfy that yes, they have understood. But as you can see, there is very little that we have actually understood, because we cannot recreate this. The day we can recreate these pots as it is, with just as good the fabric, as good the painting, as good the slip, I don't think we can say that we have understood this pottery. So, and that goes for fine ware as well as for courseware, because courseware should be easy to understand. We think, okay, it's just sharp grains of sand added externally, additionally to the fine clay, and then just fired. The firing went wrong, or it was not done properly because it's for storage, so they didn't want to make it too hard, too strong, just sturdy enough. It's not just that. That's just not the story. It's not even the story, I think. So that's with the just some insights into how research is going on. Sometimes it's off the track, sometimes it is answering a few questions in a limited manner, but the more it answers, the more there are questions. So each answer is actually uh, helping us understand that how many more questions are there. So I'll now continue with black and red ware. Now, what is interesting, and a lot of people who deal with black and red ware, apart from those who have known Rajasthan's black and red ware, usually understand black and red ware as black and red ware. But the black and red ware in Rajasthan, in what of sorry, the one of Ahad culture or Ahad Banas culture, is very different. Like you can see in this slide, that's a clearer picture. You can see these white paintings. These white paintings are unique to South Rajasthan. Nowhere in the world, people 20 years ago from today would find this white paintings on black and red ware. Just nowhere. And let me tell you, black and red ware is a pottery that is available pan India and beyond. It's just there everywhere. This somehow was the thing of that period, and even later on, it goes on until sometimes in some portions, some regions, it goes on till early medieval sometimes. But the black and red ware of Rajasthan had this white paintings, which was unique for a very long time, until we started finding it in Gujarat with the Harappan period, with the late Harappan people. And that is what my thesis was about, that there was a lot of technology, lot of economy and other exchanges that brought in a much later period the white, black and red ware from Rajasthan to the Gujarat Hadappans of North region. So I won't go too much in detail of that, but this is what is interesting, that why no one at all apart from the Ahad people made these white paintings from black and red ware. Why they didn't want to decorate? They decorated all their other pottery. They decorated with all other colors, not black and red ware, but other potteries were decorated with other colors, and even white was used for that. But they never thought of using white on this black and red ware, where the upper surface would be black. So black and red ware is mainly a red ware with the inner surface of the bowl or pot. Usually they had a lot of bowls, actually not all of bowls, but they had a lot of bowls, and they had these handy kind of shapes. They didn't have big pots, they had this handy kind of shape. I hope you people understand this handy thing. This is the shape, this is what you call handy. Okay, a small handy. So it does not have a very long neck, it has a protruding shoulder, and it has this kind of outcurved rims, usually outcurved rims. The bowls will be straight. Okay, there'll be no rim or just a straight rim. No rim means no featured rim, featureless rim. So they would put some hay inside and get the inner portion reduced, The hay probably also came out till the rim and reduced the the upper surface of the outer surface, the upper region of the outer surface. Okay, so this is what white painted black and red wear is. You have a lot of examples. These are all from Ahad Museum or otherwise Ahad culture site. The center is Udaipur. The Ahad river goes from Udaipur. It's actually Banas river is the main river, and Ahad river joins in from Udaipur and a little region around, and flows through Sirohi district and goes into the Kutch. So that's a good enough reason why it should have followed the trail of the river and reached North Gujarat, but surprisingly, the archaeologists never accepted that. But of course, there are a lot of other reasons also. So here you can see a corrugation on this potsherd, along with these spiral designs. So they had very innovative designs. These pots, these kind of designs are going on right from the beginning. That is 3700 BCE. So this date of 3700 BCE comes from Balathal, which is an Ahad site, an important Ahad site, which has uh, the earliest levels of Ahad to the later phase also. So it has a huge mound, a very attractive mound which has now been cut off and gone into the agricultural land. Supposed to be one of the very important sites to understand Chalcolithic culture in Rajasthan, the earlier levels to the later ones, but doesn't seem to be protected, unfortunately. Any archaeologist has to mention that, because it's one of the most sad things. It's like losing the family of the archaeology. So that's actually also part of research. You, as you are all into research, you should also research on how many sites are being lost and to what rate they are being lost and why are they being lost and what can be done about it. That is a research objective, but most people don't look into it. Those who are into legal matters, if they take up such things, it'll be very we'll all be very grateful to them. So you have a lot of these patterns. They have uh, I don't know, n number of patterns, dotted line, dotted zigzags, rounds, spirals, circles, all sorts of geometric design. Look at these uh, dotted lines. Okay, they are in this V shape, zigzag shape. So this is also a black and red ware, but this is a black and red ware which is found from a Harappan site. Now that is very surprising. If you talk to any archaeologist, say 20 years ago, and you told him that, or even earlier, and you told him, or say you told uh, in 1950s or so that you found a black and red ware from a Harappan site, they will say that, okay, this fellow does not know anything of archaeology, because black and red ware was exclusively a Chalcolithic pottery, Chalcolithic culture pottery. It was never found in the archaeological sites of a Harappan level. But in Gujarat, something turned, something switched. We don't know what happened, but there was a lot of black and red ware being found in Gujarat across the whole region, whether it was North Gujarat, whether it was South Gujarat, whether it was the Padri side, Saurashtra region, everywhere. And the interesting part, like I have mentioned earlier, that the North Gujarat people made black and red, made or got it from somewhere. So that is another important research that follows my research, that whether they actually made that pot right there, the black and red ware pot by Anartha people or the Harappan people was made in Gujarat, or was the ready-made pot procured from people who were making black and red ware. And the black and red ware not in this photo. Let me show you the next photo. Um, this one. This is not from Ahad culture. You can see the white paintings on the inside. These are bowls, and they have white paintings inside, which is, if you give it to any person who has worked on Ahad culture or has some idea of Ahad culture, they'll say this is undoubtedly Ahad, undoubtedly. And they are all found from a site called Kanmer in small run of Kutch, Nanurat, Kutch, and they are from Harappan level, late Harappan level. So they were either being made in the site, or they were being procured by their contact with the Ahadians. Sorry. So that is something very interesting, that uh, that whole feature of late Hadappans of adopting a lot of new cultures, a lot of new characteristics that were not that were alien to Hadappans, that they would never do. It's like they hold their own identity of pottery. They hold their own identity of particular artifacts, or um, some trade artifacts. This is not something they would accept. A mature Harappan would have told, no, we don't use this pottery, we don't make this pottery, and we don't like this pottery, so go away. But the late Harappans, they took it, they made it probably. If they didn't buy it, they made it. And usually, it's not easy to transport ready-made pots. It's very difficult. They don't have roads like we have today. They don't even have horses. They don't have anything good that could help you survive that pot across several hundreds of kilometers. So it would be a little out of question to have the pot made in Ahad culture and then being brought to the Harappan site in North Gujarat and then being used. Because if I give you statistics of pot making, firing, see, when you start making the pot, out of 100 pieces, you have some 90-95 pieces that you can bake finally. Some of them just break when you're drying them in the sun. Initially they just break. Out of that 95, when you do your painting and all that on it, another 2 or 3 break. Okay, they get deformed or something, they have to be redone. Out of those 92, now you fire, and out of that 92, once you're fired, you get something like, I mean, depends on your luck. Of course, in spite of all the skill they have, all the experience they have of firing, out of 92, they can get somewhere between 40 to 80% of it, which they can sell finally. Okay, if you have bad luck, somehow the firing didn't go well, somehow there was some little hole or chink, or some portion of the kiln broke, or somehow the pressure was such that air got in, or humidity matters, everything matters. The if the pots were not dried well pre-firing, there is a lot of issues, lot of technical issues. And let me tell you, this is something like 40 to 80% what you get after firing. So supposing if it is 40% of what you had made, so out of 100, with all that labor of yours, now that clay is also gone. If it was pre-firing deformation, you could still remake it. Now that clay is gone, 60 pots are done. Out of that 40, if you were told that put that uh, on a bullock cart, or on the back of a mule and take it to Gujarat, I'm sure you'll say, no, I'd rather sell it here for cheaper, half the price, than take it to Gujarat and land up with none to be sold. So, using all these probabilities, you would say, yeah, probably Harappan started making white weighted black and red ware, and they were now enjoying this ware because somehow, because of unknown reasons, they just gave up on Harappan pottery. And Harappan pottery, let me remind you, I don't know if you've seen, Harappan pottery is such that, like you were, Ms. Disha was talking, the um, PGW pot, when you just bang two sherds, even small sherds, which don't usually give out sounds, but if you just clink them, they will give out a metallic sound because it is thin, because it is well fired, uniformly fired. But let me tell you, for Harappan pot, as some pot as big as a jar that can come up to your waist, which has a thickness of 1.5 centimeters in the section, it can still give the same metallic sound because they had the perfection in firing. They had such utter perfection, which if you look at the shirts, you'll be amazed. There is nothing that has ever been like that afterwards. They have used thin, well navigated play in black and red, in black and red ware, also thin red slip, like I told you, in Ahad, which is deluxe pottery, in painted gray ware, in NBPW. They had very thin sections, really thin sections, say sometimes as thin as 2 to 3 mm, going up to, I think, maximum of uh, half a centimeter, or 7 millimeters, not more than that. But these are Harappan jars, Harappan pots that all give out metallic sound in spite of being as thick as 1.5 centimeters. So that is something very surprising. That skill is uh, is not seen ever again. And you take it to any potter, he just looks at it, he keeps looking at it, and he just keeps looking at it. That's all. I've talked to so many potters in Haryana, in Gujarat, Rajasthan. They don't understand. They think some modern technique has been used and this has been made. I showed it to I was working with an NGO in Gujarat and showed it to some of the potters because they are doing day in day out pottery, trying to remake the Gujarat designs. And they looked at that pot, they told, see, we don't deal with this modern pottery that you make in your showrooms, in your studios and all that. I told, this is 5,000 years old, and this is something that belongs to your grandfathers, great grandfathers, your old lineage of pot making. And they were surprised. They just didn't believe me for until 2 weeks that this is something. I had to take them to the site, to Dholavira, to show them that yes, this is coming out of a layer that is 5,000 years old. So I don't know how we can understand this pottery better, but there is a lot of it that we don't know. There is nothing almost that we have discovered, and uh, these are a lot of questions that you can look into. Like I had talked about striation. Striation is again a very misleading thing. The ceramic designers that are there, they if they leave the striation marks, they leave it because it adds to the beauty. If they hide it, because their customers don't want it. So striation marks, because most of the archaeologists, they rely on striation marks. They say that this is a wheel turn pot because of its striation marks. You cannot do that. You can always erase striation marks after it was wheel turned. You can have a slip on it. You'll never understand striation marks are there. And even the inner surface, they say okay, the outer surface would be um, it will be well polished, it will be smoothened or something, but inner surface also does not have striation marks often. So a potter can be, I mean, we cannot doubt the potter's skill. We cannot say that uh, he didn't know how to get rid of the striation marks. He didn't want to get rid of striation marks. So there are a lot of such questions, a lot of re-questioning that is required to understand the archaeological artifacts, pottery especially, because this is something that is found everywhere. You cannot, you can take away all your stuff. You can take all your gold. You can take away all of your tableware sometimes, or some of your tableware. You can take away a lot of things with you when you're migrating, when you're leaving a site, when you're abandoning it, but you will not take away the shards. You will not take away your broken pots, and you have to just, you will leave the trace. That is what you have to depend on. So artifacts are not your gold. Your gold is pottery. So if you can work on that, you can answer a lot about any culture that use pottery. Of course, metal age, later on medieval times, you had more of metal pottery, but nonetheless, there was always some terracotta pottery that was going on across every strata of the society. And even today, like we have all refrigerators, we have ROs, we have everything. Maybe for a few years some people stopped using earthen pots, but they are all coming back to it. You have bottles in offices that are kept with earthen pots. So we have to come back to it. But even if we don't come back, the older cultures definitely left a trace through pottery, and that is the window into their life. Okay, so thank you. I think we can stop with that, and we can have a look at some questions if you have.
Right. Thank you
So
so much, Pranjal, for this. And you have a lot of questions in the chat box. I think Ratan is very, very excited about this. She really wanted to attend your talk, and she couldn't do it on
yeah,
Sunday. तो जो संडे को शायद
okay.
हमारे साथ गड़बड़ हुई है वो रतन की वजह से हुई है. She would have been secretly hoping reschedule हो जाए. So lots of questions from her. Once you've taken that, then you can move on to the other set of questions. Do you
Okay,
want me to
okay.
read them out to you?
No, it's okay. I'm reading. I can see them. So, Ratan's question. So, first question about the firing technique. Okay.